Hi everyone, this is Mr. Morse with about an 8 to 10 minute discussion related to forms of ownership and business structure, which is Chapter 4. And I'd like to start it with some pictures and pose a question. What do these items have in common? You can see here a mouth guard, a helmet, and some sort of chest protector. And what would you say? What do they all kind of have in common? Well, hopefully what you noticed is that they're all forms of protection, and their purpose allows you to play your best with the best results and stay safe to play again. So why would I start off with these pictures, and how is this like business? Well, as you think about and learn about a legal structure for a form of ownership for business, that form of ownership really is a form of protection. It helps you play your best with best results, that is, get maximum profits, and you can stay safe to play again, which means you don't lose all of your assets and dig a big hole for yourself. So really, when I think about a form of ownership, I look at it as a legal structure that I understand the pros and cons, and I use it as a way to protect me and maximize my profit. So let's talk about the who cares question. Why should a business student even learn about this? Well, the first is, it's important that you know the form of ownership so that maybe someday you get a chance for some of the profits and not just work for a salary your whole life. And it ties to an objective of this course where we want to grasp the issues related to business and explain and describe entrepreneurship. These are the forms you'll use if you ever start a business someday. So let's take a look at some specific learning goals. In this particular video, about the best I can do is really allow you the opportunity for self-study. As you're going to see in a minute, I'm just going to walk through some of the pieces of the chapter. I'm going to strongly encourage you to go item by item through each of these forms of ownership because I'm asking you to know the pros and the cons, or the advantages and disadvantages, of a sole proprietorship, a partnership, a corporation, and a bit about an LLC, Limited Liability Corporation. So, understand, I just mentioned really the major three forms, and so as you begin any sort of study, I typically do an outline, and we're going to start with a sole proprietorship, the partnership, and the corporation as the three main basic forms. There are advantages and disadvantages to each, and depending on which one you use, or the type of business where you work, it will affect three major things. And the first is the profits. Where do the profits go? It's different whether it's a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation. How is it taxed? It's different between these three. And the liability, who's liable when things go wrong, is different between these three. So let's learn some of those distinctions. Taking a look first, this is what they often call the SP, or sole proprietorship. And as you can see, I pretty much am just trying to focus on things that I'll encourage you to study in the textbook. But some of the major advantages of a sole proprietorship. This is an example of a small landscaping company, a roofing company, a siding company. It's a sole proprietor, one person. That's what the sole proprietor stands for. And generally, between the three forms, it's the easiest to start up. You can definitely feel pride of ownership because you own the company. You can name it after yourself. And the key thing here is the owner gets to keep all the profits. Now, the owner also might have the losses, but this is critical because the owner really gets the profit or the losses. There are also no special taxes. And these are the top four items I'd encourage you to think about. And for a sole proprietorship, remember, sole means one, and in this case, this is just a single owner, one person. And that is a specific form of ownership, and frankly, pretty easy to set up. And people do it all the time, and you can too. Now, it's not perfect, this sole proprietorship, and let's take a look at some of the disadvantages. Remember, because it's in our name and just like us, we have what we call unlimited liability, which means we're responsible for all the debts of the business. So if we're a small organization and we're, again, a landscaping company, a siding company, a roofing company, and a sole proprietorship, we have all the liabilities. Another key issue to think about is something called lack of continuity. Here's what this means. When the owner dies, the business dies. And that's important because that's different from the other structures. And people should be aware of that because if they think maybe I have a sole proprietorship and I die, but I want it to still go to my children or something, they have to make special arrangements because otherwise they call it a lack of continuity. It will not continue on. When the owner dies, the business dies. And lastly, sometimes they're hard to fund. If you're one person, it's hard to generate money. Okay, let's switch gears now and take a look at a partnership. And here's the incredibly complex diagram I would draw. And I'm just kidding when I say that. But here's the deal. A partnership is generally two or more people who get together for the purpose of operating a business. And what I wanted you to know about is when you have a partnership, you see this is different from a sole proprietorship because now there are two people or more involved. And what I wanted you to know about, there's two distinctions. One might be the general partner, and they're responsible maybe for the whole operation. A limited partner, and this is an important word here, both of these are important, but this is especially important. A limited partner is a person who invests money in the business, they don't have responsibility, and they can only lose the amount of money they put into the business. And so this word limited is very important. If you ever get involved in one of these ventures, know your status if you're going to get partners, whether you're a limited partner, and that limits your potential losses, or you're a general partner, which means you may have a higher obligation. The other commentary that I'd like to comment is I have definitely learned personally the value when you have a partnership to craft on paper a partnership agreement. And you'll see a great model in your textbook, and frankly, I've used something very similar in the real world with a couple partnership ventures I'm involved with. The idea here is you want to get everything in writing before the business begins. Know who all the partners are. Get the business figured out. Here's a key concept. Write down how long you think this partnership will last. You'll also put in paper who's going to contribute how much money. What will our duties be? Are people going to draw salaries? And then here's a key thing I've also learned in my experience. Notice here, you actually write down how are we going to terminate this partnership before we even begin. And then everybody signs it. And these are critical components of a partnership agreement so that everybody has a clear understanding of how it will go. Now there's some advantages of partnerships, and probably the biggest part of it is you get to combine skills and knowledge with some partners. If you have a weakness, find somebody who has that strength. The other thing is you get to keep all of the profits. You'll share them with your partners, but again, the partners get the profits. We always want to know where the profits go, and in this case, it's nice to have a partner who can help with skills you may lack. There's some disadvantages to partnerships, of course, and I would say here probably the largest thing would be you may disagree with your partner. These things happen, so you want to have it in writing how those things will go. Another issue here would be lack of continuity. Like a sole proprietorship, it may not go on and on after the partner dies. You have to make special provisions for that, and those are two key features of a partnership. Now let's go to the third piece, a corporation, and that is different from a sole proprietorship in a number of ways. So please remember, under the sole proprietorship, that had one owner, and when the business dies, when the owner dies, the business dies, and the owner keeps all of the profits. In a partnership, the partners, there may be two or more people or a handful of people, and they are the partners and they share the profits. A corporation is an entirely separate structure. So let's say the second one here is a partnership. Now we're talking about corporations as our third major form of ownership. And it's a couple important things to think about for a corporation. First of all, a corporation is an artificial person. So in fact, it is itself an artificial person. It's a fake person. And so it has the ability to get into business arrangements. It can borrow money. It can spend money. It can hire people. And that is a key distinction because a sole proprietorship and a partnership are based on the people. A corporation is a fake person. Now, there are some real benefits to being part of a corporation. These are the kind of public companies you might see. It's easier to raise capital. As importantly, these are the large companies, Coca-Cola, Walmart, Apple. And in fact, in a sole proprietorship, it's really kind of hard sometimes to sell the business. Same for a partnership. But in these public corporations, you can sell shares very easily every day on the stock market. And so it's much easier to transfer the ownership. Perpetual life is one other major difference. Remember the way a sole proprietorship and a partnership, if the person dies, the business dies. Well, with these corporations, I might die, but my shares can easily be handed down to my family members. So they say that's something called perpetual life. And so it has continuity. It will continue after my death, which is why some of these companies have been around 100 years, because they keep going even if the individuals pass away. Almost done here. I appreciate you hanging with me here. Now, there are some downsides to a corporation. They're more expensive to start. They're highly regulated by the government. And then there's an issue of double taxation. And what this is about is the corporation is taxed. So know that the corporation itself, remember, it's a fake person. It pays taxes. And then when it gives out its profits, the owners are taxed. And that's why they call that double taxation. Because the truth is, you start maybe with $100, that gets taxed here, and then it goes to the individuals, and that gets taxed. And that's why they call it double taxation, and that's a disadvantage to corporations. Thank you very much. I know this is very much a self-study kind of opportunity. I tried to give you a summary of those advantages and disadvantages, so please spend some additional time and let me know if you have questions.